Welcome to The Brain. I'm your host, Peter Csathy of Creative Media. In this eye-opening fourth episode of The Brain, I interview PJ Accetturo, founder and CEO of leading AI creative agency and ad studio, Genre AI, which is backed by the heaviest of hitters in Silicon Valley. PJ and his firm Genre first hit the mark with their AI hyper-fueled ad for prediction market Kalshi, an ad that was viewed tens of millions of times. Since then, Oracle, Popeyes, and a fast-growing number of other major brands have sought out Genre, and the hits keep coming, including from major Hollywood studios. Genre works in the world of high-end, high-quality creativity. That, and the company's reputation for being the innovators in the space, is what separates Genre from the growing number of other AI-first agencies. Yes, AI significantly shortens workflows and drives down costs and timeframes during the production phase, but human creativity still rules the day in the ideation, pre-production, and post-production phases. PJ candidly discusses it all in this episode that gets to the heart of AI's disruption and transformation of the ad and creative business that is happening before our eyes. So with that, here's my conversation with PJ, better known as PJ Ace in AI and creative circles. PJ Accetturo, or otherwise known as PJ Ace, welcome to The Brain.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Crazy week. Just turned down a Super Bowl commercial, so it's going to be a fun conversation today.
Wow. That's, okay. That's the story. We're going to have to get into that. In fact, why wait?
Just jump right in.
Why wait? Like when you bring that up at the very beginning, and because it's going to be just in time for the Super Bowl that this is going to get out there, tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to name drop the particular brand organization on this. They're a fantastic brand, but it's I can talk more broadly on I think AI, which is as a background, obviously, what we primarily do. We're mostly an AI agency that just focuses on viral ads. We've had a bunch of hits. And of course, we were referred by this one brand who hasn't yet.
By the way,
just
as context, you say you have a bunch of hits. Like that's understating it. So you're a creative agency that significantly utilizes AI. Give us one of your biggest hits that you've had out there and the type of scale we're talking about.
We did the viral first Kalshi, big promo for the NBA Finals, which was, came out a couple days after VO3 launched in June of this last year. And I think, before that, AI advertising wasn't really a thing. Like the people were doing the Bigfoot vlogs, if you remember all those videos. And, there was some fun videos, but this was truly a week after VO launched. So this was the first major ad on a network for a major sports championship. And it was one of those watershed moment, if I may be so bold, for the ad industry, where they're like, oh, this is closer than we thought. And the commercial, it's a little dated now in some ways. Ironically, it still holds up, which is pretty cool. But it was like the advent of cocaine AI advertising, as I call it, where it's just nuts. Everyone's screaming. There's a woman selling manatee meat in a back of a pickup truck, and another girl in the middle of a hurricane. Because I grew up in Florida, and these are all characters I've met in real life. I just pitched them all right, it's OKC versus Indiana, and I just need a bunch of Florida people in this Grand Theft Auto universe, and we're just gonna see what happens. And they were like, cool. And then 2 days in my underwear, I made this crazy ad, and it went mega viral. 50 million, 100 million views. It was nuts.
50, 100 million views. Wow, it's crazy. That's crazy. So and we'll get more into what Genre does, but okay, continue your story about saying no to a Super Bowl ad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in did we make the right decision? I don't know. It's a really cool brand that's behind it, but the reality is, I do tell big Fortune 500 companies now, AI is not meant for every campaign, and there are a lot of them. I joke Old Spice commercials. Dollar Shave Club commercials, like what Challenger brands, all these kind of brands. It's fantastic. You know, the Kalshi commercial was great because it was unhinged and it was wild. We've done somewhat cool ads, like kind of. We did one for David Beckham's company called I Am 8, and it wasn't funny at all. It wasn't comedic, but it was cool. It was like sci-fi, quick-moving things, talking about how they partnered with like NASA and had all these space visuals for their supplements, and it was great. But I don't think we can yet do real like tearjerkers, which is what this organization was going for. There was also political elements to it that would have us kind of have to choose a side, and that was probably the big thing where I was like, all right, if there's going to be a politically connected kind of thing for the Super Bowl, I know the one thing that'll make it even more controversial, but not in a good way, is to do like AI and politics ish. It's not directly political, but it's kind of tied. And I was just like, guys, like, there's a lot of great things for AI right now. We could do a lot of different directions, but like serious political and AI, like I see this as all risk, very little upside. And I'm no stranger to like controversy and crazy, but like there's a there's a realm I won't play in per se, or at least not yet, and that was this.
Look, it's understandable. Obviously, it's it's a fraught time in many ways, and so you got to make corporations of any size got to make decisions, like judgment calls about all kinds of things. So, like, I get it, but to say no to a Super Bowl ad is a big deal. So that tells you also, or at least it tells me, PJ, kind of the stature of your company that didn't start that long ago. So, which is pretty incredible. And you mentioned that looking back at that one ad, the Kalshi ad, and how you feel it's a little bit dated already. So what has...
this stuff gets dated in like a week. You know what I mean? Like the next model comes out. It's wild.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like from the time you did that Kalshi ad to where we are today, which is in early February of 2026, what are you able to do that you weren't able to do then? Or how would you describe the level of sophistication of what your work can be now, what the agency's work can be now?
Yeah, I mean, when we started out, essentially like effectively 7-8 months ago, like we kind of launched the Kalshi ad and like boom, we were on the map as an agency, and it's been like the wildest ride. Got to work with like Popeyes a couple weeks later. I don't know, we got a big logo wall of like insane Fortune 500 companies, and we're really lucky, and I view it as like it's always changing a first principles approach, because even we will be disrupted. Like the future of advertising is agencies won't really exist, at least not in the way we know them now. I think brands will have very sophisticated, fantastic creative teams that will rapidly iterate, and I think individual creators can make some incredible things. But I think it's all this bloat, this fat, this middle layer to do these multi-million-dollar productions. Like already, like, the advertising industry's kind of been dying, or at least on the production side, because they realized that like UGC, testimonial videos are like killing their multi-million-dollar campaigns. They're not that effective anymore. And these like high-end AI videos is what we specialize in. It represents this like material difference in time and cost. It's still not cheap, but it's far cheaper than like $1 million commercial. And I think there's something like that's still really compelling over the next year or two. But for us, it's also just a wedge into what really AI is great at right now, which is like, it's got its limitations on the character consistency and speaking and all that kind of stuff. So again, we always try and work with clients like half creative agency and half production company on like, what's your big idea? Here's the ideas that'll work for that. Here's some fun angles that'll like play really well with the limitations of AI. And then I see there being the next wedge into, branded narrative stuff. Like, imagine there's a paper company like The Office, and they wanted a show, so they start The Office, like a Dunder Mifflin. Like that's going to be a next step of advertising, is it's just going to be stories, because for the first time ever, those budgets will get unlocked. And then eventually it's more Hollywood, but you and I have a lot of conversations about Hollywood, and there's a lot of limiting factors that our good friends at the studios are limited by at the moment, but that won't be the case forever. And in that case, we're excited to pivot towards more big studio stuff.
So when you lay out kind of what you just described, that you described it, there's a lot of bloat. Let's take the marketing world, the world of marketing. So, and you also mentioned that there's the big idea, which the big idea typically comes from, some kind of collaboration with the brand, right? You're talking to them. So how would you explain to everybody out there who's listening to this, what the disruption is, what genre your company is able to do effectively, and what the workflow is like compared to a more traditional agency approach, and what the end result is in terms of quality, what the end result is in terms of cost, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, great questions. And this is something I've said countless times. It's the AI production process is actually not that dissimilar to the traditional production process. Whether we're talking about traditional ad or a movie or anything like that, pre-production, post-production, like pretty much the same process. You're initially, so a brand will come to us and say, let's go big idea. So they give us big idea. We pitch them 3 concepts. And then they say, we like that concept. We turn it into a script. And they say, great, let's hit the ground running. So then we have the script. Treatment phase is next, which is standard in production. You're in the treatment, you're basically looking for what's the tone, what are like similar references for other commercials, what's the characters, and what's the locations. It's kind of the primary things you have to split. So we do it in a super fast, we can do it in 3 pages, whereas traditionally most commercial treatments are like 100 pages because it's 3 different agencies bidding against one another to win the thing, and they got to quote the lowest and they got to give the most robust deck, and it's this whole convoluted, insane thing, which is fine if you're doing a multi-million-dollar commercial, but we're direct to brands a lot of times, and we've already won the bid, so to say. So by the time the script's approved, we're just like, okay, here's the basic looks. And then they're like, great, let's move on into storyboards. And the storyboard phase is where we switch into production now. And it's very different in that instead of hand drawing the storyboards, we're basically taking our script, we're turning it into a shot list. So then we have 30 to 40 shots in the thing. And then we work with like a ChatGPT style interface where we basically say, okay, here's my shot list. I need you to break this up into, this is a new technique. I need you to break it up into 4 shot angles. And so each shot has 4 angles. And what that allows us to do is it generates spatial consistency between a shot and a scene. So we can talk about the Legend of Zelda, like the trailer and stuff that I did, but it was this massive unlock where I was able to get Link jumping from the ground in the air, cutting into the beast, and then landing on the ground. And everything is spatially consistent. Backgrounds are the same because what the model is generating is one image. And when it generates one image, it understands the physicality between all 4 sub-images in that image. And this is a constraint of the limitations of the tech right now, but it was a huge unlock that we had for consistency and lighting and tone, because previously, and right now, whenever you try and generate everything in image at a time, it doesn't really understand images that came before, context that comes before. But if you group it now into scenes of grids, it actually unlocks a lot. And then from that you go into animation, where you extract the images, you animate them, and you kind of have the big storyboard, and then the client says, "Great, I have notes on that shot, that shot, that shot," and otherwise it's like, boom, we'll animate everything, and then post production is the exact same thing.
Okay, so there's a lot there, and you'll hear
it makes sense if you've been doing this religiously for a year.
Well, and that's the thing, you make it sound. I'm not going to say you make it sound easy but it's you talk about the pre-production phase, and then you talk about the post-production phase. So it's really the production phase where you have a lot of the tools that come into play. So the pre-production phase, it's PJ and team. You have the creative vision. People come to you because of creative vision. So
right.
Is that correct? The human element there does not go away.
Yes, that's the thing I left out. Sorry. We work in pods of creatives in their own lane, in their own genius zone. So sure, I'm sort of like a ECD of our company, and that you see my guiding hand behind it. But actually, we don't like generalists, and we like experts who have been in the film industry or commercial industry.
Yeah.
And so, we can teach tools in a day. We cannot teach taste in a day. And so we split things up. We have a lead writer on a project. We have a lead director on a project, lead cinematographers, animators, and then post-production editing. And so, writing, same. You don't need to have a big AI background, though you need to know the constraints. Director, We like to work with directors who just, they understand how ads and orchestrated and they give instructions. The cinematographers, we like to work with real cinematographers that understand lighting and taste and all these and then we just kind of teach them the tools, and then the animators are just prompting the animations and stuff. It's probably the easiest thing of the whole process. So that's kind of it. So we can construct like these non AI teams when we give them the process and the support and the infrastructure on it. And that's what makes it, hopefully, our commercials a lot better than the other AI studios, which primarily are working solo creators, and everyone's fighting over the same like 30 in the world who are like good right now. Yeah. And you can't scale that way.
Yeah. And so how about on the post side? Is it still, you still need, the post team that is or is not using these generative tools?
It's a good question. I think it differs from production to production. Like the bulk of it is all like manual. Where AI currently is like saving things is you can actually feed it clips. Now all the models generate sound with it, but you can like prompt, I guess, sound design and whatnot, it speeds it up a little bit. I do believe in prompting music when there's lyrics. Like we did an ad for Qatar Airways that was really cool 2 months ago. And we had like "When You Wish Upon a Star," and that was the reference.
Pretty good.
150 grand. Hey, thank you. We had like it was like 150 grand to license that song, and then the other song was like when the Willy Wonka song, like "Pure Imagination." This is my show tunes hour.
I tell you, man, this is good.
And then that was another like 150 grand. So I was like, look, guys, let me work with ChatGPT and two of my friends who are great. One guy worked on Hamilton and whatnot. So like,
wow.
You also need kind of musicians on that. But I was like, all right, guys, let's extract what is the essence of these. We're not just, because in the models, you can't just say like, okay, make me wish upon a star, go. You've kind of got to work with an LLM to say like, all right, what is the essence of this song without, saying the same lyrics and saying the same thing. And it's like, okay, it's ethereal, ephemeral, it's whimsical, it's magical, it's fantastic. And then you took that into the model, and then sometimes even like, the advanced music guys, they'll hum bars, they'll give it lyrics, they'll do all these things. And like the Qatar Airways ads are like some of the best songs. People thought, I showed it to all my friends, they were like, I've heard that song before. And I was like, nope, generated for, we paid our artists like, we paid them good, but like we paid like a couple grand on like this song. We didn't pay 150 grand a song.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's really interesting because, you have your teams that are, there's the differentiation that comes from just a creative team that never goes away. And people are going to come, like for high end, whether it's marketing, creative ads, whether it's films in the future or whatever it may be, you're going to have the creative teams that never go away. You have and that's all along the chain. Now there's going to be the implementation of the tools like there have been when it comes to like CGI or whatever it is with new technology coming that way. Obviously, some people are going to be able to utilize those tools more effectively than others, but nonetheless. The team, so you still have a team of people. It's not PJ Ace doing it all on his own. Like you've created many videos on your own, but for the agency itself, you have teams of people doing this. Now, so let's make it really concrete. If you had like the Qatar Airways ad, that was let's say that cost, I don't know, I'm making it up. Let's say that cost, I'm making this up. This is not.
Close your ears, Fortune 500 companies.
Yeah. Yes.
I've gotten into trouble so many times.
Let's say it cost $100,000. I have no idea.
Okay, no, that's fine. You're in the ballpark. It costs $100,000. That's around how much we charge at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. If it were $100,000 in a traditional way, the same ad, how long for $100,000? How long did that take compared to if you did a traditional way without PJ Ace and team doing it? What would it have been?
Yeah, that's a great parallel because again, these are supposed to be multi-million-dollar shoots that we're replacing. Like there's a lot of ads like smaller companies shouldn't work with us. Like we found that it's either a race to the top or a race to the bottom. And we certainly don't want to do a race to the bottom. And, at some level, like, do I even know if we can charge $100,000 for an ad in 2 years, 3 years when Meta's automated everything and it knows your customer segments and like all these, like, maybe not, we'd like to hope that larger brands would, but it's also why we're trying to diversify into more longer form and narrative and whatnot. I think sometimes brands realize that it's more expensive to be cheaper on AI ads, in that, you'll have some of these brands like McDonald's and Coke recently did 2 ads that weren't received well. And I'm sure I mean, that's not like they probably cheaped out with the agencies, but when they didn't have a great team and they didn't spend the amount of time, there's the inconsistencies and whatnot, and some of it's limited by the tech. But that was expensive for them. So I don't think that companies should just race to the bottom for these things. I think you need to kind of find this middle ground, which is what we are, where you're not paying $1 million for a traditional ad, but you're also able to do it. We like to say creative takes a couple weeks, sometimes up to a month. And that's because the larger brands we work with, you can't just pitch an ad and get it greenlit. It's got to go through 6 rounds of approval. So that is not always fast. Sometimes, we get the Kalshi, or in this case, what might have been a Super Bowl ad that we have to turn the creative around in days. But on the whole, the process usually takes a month for creative and revisions, because that's our agency half, and then production is another couple weeks. So it's about a month-ish on that. Obviously, there's crazy exceptions for the Qatar Airways one. I did that in the air. So I was in 15, on a flight for I was on a flight for 15 hours. We were kind of showing off their new Starlink capabilities. And again, it was one of those all right, guys, if you're down to YOLO this, I am too. Let's make an ad in 15 hours before we land from, JFK to Doha. It was fun.
That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of unlocks. Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned a 6-week process in that example.
Yeah,
in an example. Mm-hmm. And how long would to do that the non-genre way, the traditional way, how long would that same ad have taken?
Yeah, I mean, months and months, 3+ months. You've got the production planning and the licensing and the permits and the actors and the casting and all these expenses, not just expenses, but just the time it takes. And then a lot of times, there's post-production, so for a lot of the Qatar Airways, they had a lot of CGI characters and all these things. And for us, it really is just can take a lot shorter.
Okay. So when you've had your initial clients so far, how would you say, what are the big takeaways for them and how they are delighted compared to what they've gone through before in terms of the process itself? There's cost, of course. We've talked about that. There is the timing, and I would imagine iterating with the client is going to be much faster too, to get the input and all that. Are they as satisfied, would you say? What is the reaction to the actual output itself, the actual ad that's created?
Depends on the ad, is the honest question. I'd like to say. Of course. Some concepts, it just feels like it's just this perfect, everything's it's on point. Some, we got to say hey, we got to eat costs, we got to do revisions, because the AI, we thought it could do this and it's not. And that's probably the messiest part of my job is there's some concepts that we think will just be a slam dunk, and the models just have no training data for what we're trying to do, because they're trying to have millions of, this one we're working on, it's millions of dollars of cash that turns into a mountain. You got this baby riding down in this bathtub, and he's doing all these crazy stuff. And so that is the tone in which we like to say. We like to say, ironically, the more expensive the script would be if you shot it in real life, that the easier and the more doable it will do on our end, because what's really difficult right now is a diner scene. Actually we did, this it was I probably shouldn't say more about it, but it was a contained one scene in an office setting, and there was no drama and no action. And I was this isn't as compelling as our other stuff. And it was the safer bet. It was the safer script. And I was we should have made this 10 times more insane. The safe bet is an insane one, because then people understand, of course you didn't shoot this in real life. You did this in CGI or AI, and I don't really care, because I'm having a blast and watching it. And that's the sweet spot right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the kind of the, you mentioned the name or the word whimsy, whimsical before.
Yeah.
So there's tell me if this is right. If you're trying to use these tools, AI, to be photorealistic,
right,
and really going for that, then there's kind of an uncanny valley aspect to it. And so utilizing these tools, kind of what you're going for, tell me if this is right, is to do something that is a little bit over the top.
Yep. Totally.
And do you
totally.
think
like
that? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, like like Old Spice is one of the greatest commercials of all time. You remember Terry Crews or the Isaiah Mustafa or his "Ladies, Back to Me." Like there's something that's just like timeless to just, I don't want to say stupidity, but like, it's just like really fun, sticky advertising. A lot of the best advertising, from like the Aflac duck to whatever, is like the more insane it is, the kind of better it is. Mayhem, like it's another iconic ad. And like, I think that's, at least tonally, like that's who I am. I'm just like an insane weird guy or something. I've got like trauma from my past. I'm still working out with my therapist, but like,
we'll get into that in another interview.
Oh, dude, let's do it, man. Because like half our videos are like grandmas in bikinis, so I need help, man. I really do.
Hey, listen, it's all working for you. Okay, so
it's all working for me.
So you mentioned that you see the company getting into longer form.
Yep.
So let's talk about that just briefly. How do you feel Hollywood will be when we're talking about television series or long form film, feature films? Do you see that there will be a big change in the next 2-3 years? Do you expect that there would be a predominantly AI generated film that's an actual high quality feature film grossing highly in the box office?
That's the question. That's the real question here. I know that there will be a very high box office hybrid film. The question is like, would you have some sort of Pixar like, which is probably the lowest hanging fruit because there's not the uncanny valley as it is with animation. Right. Like right now, like there's a lot of great looking stuff I would not know was AI. Like you just can't really tell at the moment. But with kind of more human like photorealistic stuff, like I don't know if we're probably not a year out from that, maybe 2, likely 3. But I do think that like the future of most films they're going to be AI, but I think they're going to be AI in this like motion capture, just in the way that Avatar is like nobody is like angry about Avatar because like actors drove all the performances. You know what I mean? Like sure, it's not generated, but like effectively like the future of filmmaking is the Avatar workflow. I think the hybrid workflow. So I have a friend named John Irwin. He did the House of David. He's the showrunner on that #2 show on Amazon this year, and he's exploring doing a lot of hybrid workflows with AI, where he'll shoot real actors on volume, on green screen, Mandalorian style. But then for a lot of the wide shots and coverage, and this is what they did on House of David season 2, is they used AI to really supplement and stretch the budget. You can't get 100,000 soldiers, but even traditional VFX in Maya or Blender, 100,000 soldiers is also expensive. And so now it's just like, he was like, we just prompted out, we had a drone shot on set. We basically took a screenshot of our core actors, and there was like 10 of them fighting. And then we just made, hundreds and hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands. And it feels really epic when you watch the show. For whatever, however many millions they spent on an episode, it feels like it's Game of Thrones, where it's like 30 million. And there was a lot of people in the industry that were just like, you guys are a David and Goliath story because you have a tiny budget and you're out shooting some of these massive, films which kind of fail. I think, and I talked to some friends at Disney and whatnot, and like the Star Wars model of like $400 million shows or $200 million shows, like it's dying. Andor was like the last of its era. I even think, like it's just these things aren't getting greenlit from my experience. And I'm a more of a Hollywood outsider than I am insider. But my understanding is that like they're trying to figure out a new way to still work with these IPs, but they can't do it at that price point. And I actually think this is the best inflection point for AI to be the answer to these really bloated, even like Star Trek had this really controversial season called Starfleet Academy or something, and everyone was like, it's too niche, it doesn't work for whatever they spent like $9 million an episode. And I think actually Star Trek could be this unique model if they did a hybrid workflow with AI where content is hyper niche these days. Like studios are competing with Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, etc. And that is how we actually consume content is in hyper niche things. But the problem is, when you spend 200 million on a season, you can't have it hyper niche. You gotta have all the 4 quadrants, and it's gotta appeal to nobody and appealing to everybody and all these things. And I think actually, if you tenth the budget, but then just have 10 different niches of Star Trek, Star Wars, a lot of video game IPs right now, you get massive audiences, but have different directors take on a horror, a buddy comedy, like all these kind of different subgenres of that.
Yeah, that's
and then
interesting.
People can choose.
That's interesting. Of the same IP, and then you just have a bunch of different creators creating their own vision, and some will appeal to many different niches, and some don't. That's a really interesting way to think about it. So more stories are told and being able to reach an audience, because otherwise they wouldn't have been made.
Right.
Let me ask you a question that's always been, in my view, something that's an interesting potential. How realistic it is, I don't know. It seems like, back to the world of advertising, seems like Matthew McConaughey, all right, is everywhere. Like, he's everywhere. He and Bradley Cooper are like in everywhere. So, these guys are asked all the time, do you see a world in the advertising sense where you have Matthew McConaughey, now he is asked to do this ad, this ad, this ad. And it's still, you got to go through the production, all that, it's disruptive to their lives and you can't do it all or whatever. But now do you see with the AI tools, do you believe that there's going to be an ability for, whether it's actors in Hollywood or whether it's actors or players in commercials, where they're just going to be able to license their participation, their personas, and then it will just be another ingredient in the marketing campaign. You know what I mean? So it's like, they're not actually on set doing it. You're in the lab creating using the AI tools.
Yes.
Do you see that happening?
A thousand, because it's already happening, right? 11 Labs, which is the huge unicorn voice generator. They got Michael Caine's likeness, where you have to do custom contracts. You can't just like, I'll take it. Judy Garland, John Wayne.
That's right.
Yeah, a couple other big names, and they're I talked to the team. They're like rapidly adding to the names. These are voices for now. I think we'll do image likeness when the models get a little better. Because we've even worked with a few celebrities, and like we tell them we cannot make you talk yet, but we can have you walk around and do all these things. Like we worked with the #1 tennis player in the world, Arina Sabalenka. And we had her voice. We cloned her voice. She's like a partner in the David Beckham brand, and we were able to kind of make her drink the drink and do all these things. And she wasn't on set, and she loved it. Like she was like, great, like thank you. And how many basketball stars and football stars do you know that like doing the shoots is like the worst part of their job, but they love getting paychecks?
No, that's right. And they get creative approval at the end. They get to, see, okay, yeah, that's fine. You can use that one. That's exactly right. I think that athletes are notoriously not loving to do commercials, but yet they want to be in the commercials and they want to get the, the paycheck that comes from them. And by the way, a fun fact about 11 Labs, which is pretty interesting, because you have the IP, understandable. I talk about it all the time. IP licensing for the tools that are used and all this. But interestingly, Disney is an investor in 11 Labs. So, and a very early investor in 11 Labs. So that's interesting. So just to finalize, PJ, what's your advice to creatives out there, no matter what industry, whether it's in Hollywood, whether it's in, advertising or visual artist, anything? What's your advice right now, given this significant transformation of the creative industries with AI?
Yeah, great question. That's not easy, because I have like 100 pieces of advice. I think the thing I say the most is follow your curiosity, because you've got a unique POV that nobody else does, and like you've got a story that no one else can tell in the world but you. And it's also what keeps you up at night, because I think the people in any industry, filmmaking aside, is like the people who grow the best, the ones who are the most fascinated by something, and their curiosity outstrips willpower. It outstrips like routines and habits. Just curiosity is like the greatest driving force of success and growth. And so I'm like, just play in the worlds in which you want to explore. Like I've done a couple viral trailers. Like I did the Princess Mononoke live action adaptation a year ago. Recently did this Zelda adaptation, a week ago. Sorry, Nintendo lawyers who are maybe listening to this podcast. I'm a little afraid of you. But like, I think for me, those worlds were just so fun to explore. It was felt like playing a video game with AI, and like obviously I just do all this stuff for fun, and it's I understand that like this is part of the playground of AI, but I think a lot of times, like doing things in which you have domain expertise, a unique point of view in that you can connect with like a niche fandom, it can really put you on the map and really get you talking to whether it's studios or other things like, other agencies or brands, like people like hyper niche content, and there's some sort of weird hyper niche thing that there's a massive fan base on, and if you can tap into that with AI, that's how a lot of creators are getting put on the map right now. Is they're like, hey, I love this world, I explored it in a film or in kind of a commercial. I do think though that like it's hard to make money just doing like AI, like there's no money inherently in AI fan films. You can do it as a calling card for people to hit you up, but I will say the money right now is in advertising, in that if you're doing spec work, spec ads for your favorite brands in a funny way, that's where brands will reach out direct, agencies will book you. Like that's where the opportunities are right now. Yeah.
What you were talking about, like even some of the work that you referred to, the fandom aspect of it. Right. The fandom aspect of it, when you put the IP in the hands of the fans of, whatever it may be, you could be an athlete, you could be a musician, you could be a brand, you could be, one of the movies that you mentioned, and you're not cannibalizing from the actual end product, or what they're creating, like the real film that's coming out, or the real whatever it may be, or the real Grimes artist, because Grimes gives her fans the ability to create songs based on her voice and her stems. It's delighting the fans of that brand, and it's marketing for that brand if done right, and so it's like an amplification where fans, if they get an opportunity, and I've always talked about this, and I'm so such a purist when it comes to IP and the creator and licensing and all. I'm such a but I've always been a fan of the fandom aspect of what AI can do. And I go back to what Disney, as an example, just licensed all of its characters, beloved characters, to Sora for use by OpenAI and Sora. And Disney's notoriously the most hands-on lawyers of all time, right? But
it's like a legal organization that masquerades as a media company, right?
Well, yes. I mean, many would say over time. So anyhow, but what Disney realized, and this anecdote is so perfect for this. A few years ago, and I think I mentioned this to you once, PJ, that Disney, for the movie Frozen, which became, its animated film Frozen became the biggest of all time. Yeah. And it's largely attributable now, like in retrospect, the stories, the anecdotes are the fact that it was the first time that Disney lawyers took a hands-off view of their songs of Frozen being used in videos by fans. So this is the first time that fans were creating their videos, uploading, singing them, and Disney wasn't coming down, cracking down, having takedown notices to these things. And it was that fandom where all these videos of all this passionate fans singing these songs, that led to this great demand for going out to see the film, and the most successful animated film of all time. And so there is as strong as I feel about certain things on the IP side, there is also this super fandom aspect that I've always believed in. And I think that's a really big opportunity for people who are listening out there.
Right. I mean, the Star Wars fandom is like the best example of this, in that they've kind of been, I don't want to say keeping the IP alive for, what is it, like 30, 40 years now? Or is it 50 years? God forbid.
Yeah, 50.
50, crazy, truly. But like, I mean, it's had some dry spots, and just like Lucas didn't film for 20 years between, like the first two films, and then it was like kind of another 15-year gap or whatever. And I think the thing is, like, the fandom, Lucas seemed to be always down for fan films, and my understanding, this is probably more like informal, but like when Star Wars was acquired, it was kind of this like please don't take down all of YouTube's fan films. And truly, like, despite Disney being probably a fairly litigious organization with some things, like this, all Star Wars channels are like hyper prolific, and the fan films are like incredible, and they really are. Like, there's actually an AI fan series on Star Wars right now that they're getting like hundreds of thousands of views, and they do basically take the books and they do the lore behind, you know, what happened before the movies and after the movies, and like fan community is like eating it up. And I think this is like the great, hopefully, middle ground we find where like this can inspire not just the next generation of filmmakers to start and wet your beak, if you will, with like IP. Obviously, you can't really monetize it, but if that just starts relationships with other filmmakers, a lot of times it becomes a calling card for the studios. Like I've had studios reach out after some of my fan films, and I always try and put like huge disclaimers, like this is, you know, not affiliated or anything like that. But if we can just look at this as like, guys, we're all 6-year-old kids. AI is like super fun, and we're just here to inspire other generations of filmmakers and do the things we wish we could have as kids. Like, that's where this stuff is magical, man.
So what you mentioned, like the lore, unlocking the lore of Star Wars or whatever IP, that's something that in my last conversation was with John Zapp of Google, and he was talking about that was his big aha moment working with, because they have partnerships at Google in the AI realm, working with Darren Aronofsky and and Doug Liman, great filmmakers, and how one of the aha moments they all had was that there's unlocking what they would call the fourth dimension of filmmaking, which is the lore, where people can explore the lore behind a character, behind a story, or so you get into these little elements that otherwise are just have not been out there. That's cool. I think that's really cool. So anyhow, PJ Ace, thanks for joining me today. PJ Accetturo from Genre AI, which is a hot marketing company right now. And so check them out at genre.ai. PJ, thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
The Brain Podcast is a weekly production of Creative Media, Peter Csathy's AI, entertainment, media, and marketing, business advisory, and legal services firm. Look for it every Tuesday and follow it, rate it, and subscribe to it. It's edited and mixed by Luca Csathy with original music by Mark Mothersbaugh of Devo. You can learn more about Creative Media at creativemedia.biz. Until next time, keep innovating, but smartly, fairly, and in partnership with artists, not in spite of them. After all innovation ultimately flows from the brain of creators. Cheers.